All right, everyone. Thank you for being here. I know you all are excited. Um, Whoa, that was not what I intended to do. We're going to talk about screen blocking today. I'm going to give people just another second to pop in. I am going to ask, please make sure you stay muted. Background noise can get wonky. So please, please, please keep your mute on. We hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll have time at the end for a few questions. I'll say it right now and I'll say it again at the end. I'm not going to answer questions about anything that we don't cover today. Okay? So when we have question and answer at the end, it will only be about things that will be on the docket of things to cover for today. Today we're going to talk about screen blocking and illegal contact. So in the list of changes that are coming, we've had screen blocking in ours. And as I spoke about last week, for those of you who are here and have had a chance to view it, screen blocking was allowed. However, it isn't conducive to allow screen blocking with the rush line being at 7 yards. So now that we have a 1 yard neutral zone, screen blocking will make a lot more sense. It will also make a lot more sense when we start seeing some videos. I know that there are a lot of concerns out there, and coaches are concerned about what screen blocking will look like downfield. We're going to talk some about that and why and how, screen blocking. I know coaches are concerned that they're, just going to send a blocker running with the ball carrier to keep people away. And you'll understand why that could turn illegal really quickly as we get into this. So, we hope to give you all some language that you get to use as you are calling fouls or not calling fouls, and coaches are asking questions on the sideline that you will know what's up. Okay? We'll be using the language out of the rule book. So it will be what you read when you finally get your rule books. It will be the same language, as well as some additional language from the CIF State Rules Interpreter and what the interpretation in California is going to look like as far as screen blocking, illegal and legal, as well as some ideas about how to call illegal contact fouls. So it will be the most difficult foul that we call. Things happen quickly on a flag football field, and we have to be aware of several players all at the same time making judgments and decisions about whether they were causing or creating contact or not causing or creating contact. We're going to define some of these words so that you know better, because we understand contact is a big thing, and depending on how you want to define it is going to matter. So from CIF, you'll learn how CIF wants you to define contact as far as what's legal and illegal. Again, I said there will be specific language given to you tonight that will help you be able to explain your calls or your no calls. But please, please, please make sure you're seeing the play all the way through and considering all of the elements and components of the play before you make a call. We're not just throwing flags anytime somebody's bumping someone. It's not going to work. Okay? The components of legal and illegal blocking and contact. We're going to talk about contact and when a foul is called so that you understand and can define it. We're going to talk about right of place and right of way and how you will use those phrases when describing legal or illegal blocking, legal or illegal contact. I will tell you right now, and we'll get to this in a minute, but the definitions are in the rule book and they are not, they're clear. They're definitely clear definitions, but you will need some of this other language coming from CIF as far as interpretation of what is legal and what is not legal. So right of place and right of way, as well as a firm definition on contact, are not in the rule book. You're only going to get those from CIF as far as the interpretation they intend to use with legal screen blocking.
Little rest before we press.
Please stay muted, guys. All right. Blocking is, your new rule books will have a definitions section, which is Rule 2, just like the rule books you're familiar with looking at when it comes to NFHS published rule books. So 2.3.1 says, blocking is obstructing an opponent by contacting them with any part of the blocker's body. Again, blocking is obstructing an opponent by contacting them with any part of the blocker's body. Blocking in this game and this rule book is illegal. So blocking when I am contacting with any part of my body would be illegal. Screen blocking is taking a position to obstruct the path of an opponent without contacting the opponent with any part of the blocker's body. Again, don't start freaking out because we will talk about what contact looks like and how it's defined and what you'll be calling fouls and what you won't be calling fouls. In this rule book, blocking is illegal. Screen blocking is legal. So keep in mind, blocking, according to this definitions in this rule book, blocking has contact. Screen blocking has no contact. It is obstructing the path. Obstructing the path. Okay? So, contact, as we want it defined, is touching an opponent with impact. So if we are going to do something that is legal, I can touch the opponent without impact. If I am touching them or I quote unquote contact them, and again, be cautious of using that word, if there is touching that happens with no impact on the play or the player, it is not contact in this sense. So when we go back to our definition of blocking, right? Obstructing opponent by contacting them. That contact in this definition must impact the opponent. Is that making sense to everyone? Again, we'll go back. Blocking is obstructing an opponent by contacting them. According to what we want you to use for contact, contact will be touching with impact. Touching with impact. Touching with no impact will not be a foul. All right, so let's walk through just a couple, right? Offense. The ball carrier runs through the player attempting to deflag. If you've been on flag football fields, you've seen this. Ball carrier gets a head of steam and they're just going full force, and the player reaches in to grab that flag and everybody's on the ground in a pile, right? If the offense could have avoided that contact, they caused the contact, that would be an illegal contact foul, right? The defense rushes straight into the body of the quarterback attempting to throw a pass. that would be a foul, right? I have to deflag without contact, and in our definitions, that contact impacted the play. That defensive person is rushing straight into the body of the quarterback, attempting to throw a pass. They have impacted the quarterback's ability and opportunity to make that pass. That is a foul, an illegal contact foul. Okay. We're going to bounce back and forth a little bit between screen blocking, legal, and contact because all of these things play into you calling the same fouls. We all know flag football should be a quote non-contact sport, but we know there will be some contact. So again, I will impress upon you, understand that any contact that does not impact the play or the player will be not ignored. That's not the right word. Any contact that does not impact the play will be overlooked or not called a foul, not overlooked. We don't call a foul on that. Okay. Did it impact the play or the player? Before I throw my flag, I need to be able to answer that question. If it did not impact the play or the player, 99 times I'm going to leave that alone. If there is no impact, be slow when you're throwing these flags for illegal blocking or contact fouls. Make sure you're able to answer the question. Did it impact the play or the player? So let's talk about right of place and right of way. Right of place is given to any stationary player who maintains normal player posture and make no movement in a horizontal direction to change their position. Right of place will always supersede right of way when determining who is guilty of a foul. If I have established my place on the field, it is mine. And if there is contact that impacts me or my ability to make a play, we would have an illegal contact foul or we would have an illegal blocking foul. Okay. Right of place, important. Right of way. Right of way is given to a player who has established a direction of movement in a regular manner that does not alter the direction. A player with the right of way has higher privilege when determining who is guilty of a foul than other players, except those who have established right of place. We don't need to worry about this in the image. The offense cannot impede the direct path. We don't need to worry about that either. Sorry, y'all. I thought that I had removed what needed to be removed out of there. Again, we'll say again, right of place always supersedes right of way. Don't forget that. Right of place always supersedes right of way. Make sure that you know and understand those two definitions. I'm going to go back to the right of place definition for just a minute so that anybody who wants to take notes can do that quickly. Okay. Make sure we give you guys time to digest all of this. right of way. Again, I'll give it just a couple of minutes so that you can, about 20, 30 seconds, so you can write some things down. And while you're taking notes and while you're doing this, I will let you know these two definitions could be very, very important for you to know. You will have a short, very short quiz that will be proof of attendance in this meeting. At the end of this, we'll put the link in the chat at the end. But these two definitions, as well as what contact is defined as a foul inside of CIF, three very important things for you guys to know.
Hey,
And
Marion, can I say something real quick?
yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Because you're letting us, at what point will you put these PowerPoints up? Because there's some wonder. I know once the rule book comes out, but will you be putting these up at some point too? Because people, I know you don't want to ask questions, but I think that's a good question they asked, so that's why I wanted to ask you real quick.
Yeah, the PowerPoints, yeah, we can get them. I'll send them. We'll put them on the CFOA website. So it's cfoaref.org. I'll get them to James and have him put the PowerPoints on I'll create a slideshow and have him put them on the website. And all of these meetings are recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube so that you all will have access to them and can go back and watch them at any point in time should you have questions or want further clarification. Okay, so I hinted towards blocking downfield, right? And the concerns that coaches are generally having about how it's just going to be a bloodbath out there. Right of place and right of way are used to determine if a legal screen block is made or an illegal contact foul needs to be called. These are even more important when considering blocking downfield. So the blocker is moving with the ball carrier and makes impactful contact with a defensive player who has established their space when trying to deflag the ball carrier. Foul, illegal blocking, or illegal contact. The penalty is the same for both, so don't stress about which foul you call. Okay? Again, I have a blocker that's running 1 or 2 yards ahead of my running back with the ball headed toward the sideline. A defensive player steps up and establishes right of place, attempting to get to the flag. That blocker or that player running with the ball carrier is responsible to avoid impactful contact. So I hope that as coaches and players learn things like this and officials on the field are making this call, that the gameplay will adjust to these kinds of calls where if you're going to send a blocker with your running back downfield, it's probably likely that they're going to be assessed with an illegal blocking or an illegal contact foul because right of place supersedes right of way. So any illegal contact by the ball carrier, an illegal movement of the ball carrier directly at a defensive player who has established position on the field. We just talked about this. This includes lowering the head, initiating contact with shoulders, forearm, chest, or hips. When the defense has established their place on the field, the ball carrier is responsible to avoid contact. Right of place always supersedes right of way. And I know that you all have seen this a bunch of times where the defender stops and gets ready to go in for those flags, and all of a sudden we have a collision. The responsibility in that instance most likely was on the running back to avoid that contact. This should be an agile, lots of moving around, lots of juking, lots of cuts, lots of everything kind of sport. If you're not seeing that, then there's probably a lot of fouls happening and we need to be calling those fouls. All right, rule 9.3.1. Blocking by any player is illegal unless it is a screen block. Again, know who is responsible to have avoided the contact, who has right of place, who has right of way. Was the contact impactful? Okay. If the players are moving, they still have right? I can move in my screen block laterally and continue to push that player out of their position. We will see what this looks like when we get to some film in just a few minutes. On the right slide, sorry. And from your NFHS rulebook 9.3.2, after assuming a legal position, a screen blocker may move to maintain legal position by moving in the same direction or path as the opponent. A screen blocker shall not extend the arms or use the hands, arms, elbows, or legs to initiate contact. When the blocker is moving along a line parallel to the defense, they maintain their legal position. This still is going to be right of place. This line can be any shape. Circular, you're going to see an example, and still remain legal. The responsibility would still fall on the defense to move around the screen blocker. So my right of place can shift as long as I'm shifting to a new space on the field that isn't occupied by another player. And I can continue to push that defensive player around me. Screen blocking is not standing still. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. Screen blocking, we are allowing them, and they can absolutely 100% move their feet along a parallel line to the path of the defender that they are trying to block, screen block. And as long as they maintain that line and continue to push the defender along that line, once they lose that line, then it's different. Once the defender gains an advantage off of that line around them, things change. Okay? So, give me just a second and let's start looking at what this is all going to look like. I'm going to play a few minutes. Hold on. I'm going to play a few minutes of this video, right? You guys are going to watch what this screen blocking is going to look like when it's done legally, at least for this first little section. And then we're going to clip away. I'm going to let this play out for a few minutes because it has some blocking plays further in. It's about 6 minutes of just different blocking plays in about 10 to 15 second snippets. So I'm going to let this play for and just let you watch what's happening here. Now we know this isn't at full speed, right? These players are obviously doing this so that that's going to be illegal. That's the line that once it's crossed, now the screen blocker no longer has their right of place, right? As soon as that defender gets across that midsection of the body, that foot going out, that's going to be illegal. We're going to have some hand contact on the far side. Those hands need to stay down. We can't extend hands and push. All right, let's start working our way through some of these next ones. Other things that happen in these we'll talk about as they go on, but what we're really watching for in most of these videos is going to be what's going on with the screen blocking. Right, so let's go back here just a little bit. We have almost contact by the center, and then she decides she's going to let her go by. Then we get number two, just establishing and maintaining that position in front of the quarterback until the quarterback starts to roll out to the outside. This one should be pretty clear, right? Center holds up, doesn't extend a leg, player gets around her, that's going to be legal all the way around. And she brushes her just a little bit. There's no impact of that touch, so we're not calling that a foul. Number two gets in front and continues to maintain that space through all of this, blocking her off and giving her quarterback just a little bit more time there as the quarterback escapes around the side. Again, not much here, but you're starting to get an idea of what this screen blocking, if she decides to move laterally here, she can maintain her position, but that defender got a little jump on her and gets around the edge before she can do. And then we realize that it's really a trick play and they're just trying to dump it off to the screener anyway. I think we will start seeing a lot of plays that look like this where we're just going to fake it out and then dump it to the screener and be able to pick up 5 to 8 yards pretty easily as the screener turns around to catch that ball. Oh, hold on, it didn't switch. Did everybody see that? So here, this one's pretty obvious. As the blocker extends a leg and trips up this screener trying to get there. Now, the obvious part is the player going to the ground. What we have to be careful about are they're going to start trying to draw this foul and they are going to start flopping from time to time trying to draw this foul. So if you are, and this foul in the backfield like this is 90% of the time going to be, probably 95% of the time going to be the responsibility of the referee. So referees, please be aware that you need to see all of this and position yourself so that you can catch that and be able to get that call. I'm going to play that again at full speed. I just want you to think about right of place, right of way, contact impacting a play, and whether you have a foul on this particular. I will tell you, in my opinion, and again, we have the ability to rewind and slow motion. This hands-on right here, defense can't do that, right? Defense can't put their hands on any more than the blocker can put their hands on. And I think that hands-on with just enough of a push caused that blocker to go to the ground. And in my opinion, we could have had an illegal contact on the defense on this play. Okay? Referees, if you need to position yourself a couple of yards ahead of here in order to make that call, don't be afraid to step up a couple of yards. Just don't step up. Make sure you're closer to the sideline if you are going to step up, because you got to be able to get back out of the way should that quarterback suddenly start to roll just like that and you need to move with them. Okay? But I would support any legal contact on the defense foul on that play. At full speed, I think it could have possibly looked more like a flop than an illegal contact. So if we're just looking at the blocker, right? We have some contact here. Who's responsible to avoid that contact? In this instance, the defense was, right? That blocker has a pretty good right of place, and the defense should have avoided that contact. Now, we could have had a foul on that. However, if I let the play develop, does that impact the play? No, the defender wasn't going to get there. The ball was away. The screen blocker didn't go to the ground. But you could have had a foul on this. You could also leave it alone, given that it does not have an impact on the play. And the contact really doesn't have an impact on the player either. It kind of slows the defensive player down more than it slows the screen blocker. Affected the rusher more than it affected the screen blocker in this instance, in my opinion. But again, part of the reason for these trainings is for you to begin developing your own opinions, begin understanding using the language contact with impact, right of place. That screen blocker absolutely has right of place there. 100%. Okay. And starting to train your eye to be able to see these things at full speed, right? So watch it again one more time at full speed and see. This next one, perhaps a little controversial. Let's see. Foul, no foul. So we saw in a video just a couple of minutes ago, a lot more hand contact and a bigger push than we saw there, right? Much, much, much bigger. So if we're going to talk about whether this foul has impact, or if this contact, sorry, not this foul, if this contact has impact, player goes to the ground, but do they go to the ground of their own accord trying to move, or do they go to the ground because of the contact? It's a judgment, right? Again, this referee is a little bit blocked out of seeing this. This would be a point where we would hope our line of scrimmage official, if you can, we understand you have a lot to see downfield. We know you have responsibility with wide receivers downfield, and you cannot leave all of those wide receivers to the field judge. So line of scrimmage officials, if you can get a peek back there, you may have a better angle on this foul where the referee is just a little bit blocked out from understanding what kind of contact happened here. But you can also see they are stepping up. That referee is stepping up to see if they can get a better angle on what's going to happen here. So referees, don't be afraid to step up and get in a better position to make that call. It was a great job by that referee coming in and getting that flag pulled before that ball went away. Our screen blocking here happens mostly by the center. After the snap of the ball, moves over to take a position in front of this defender and gets a legal position, forcing them to turn and go the other way. That center did a really great job on that screen block right there. I would say more often than not, we will see a mess of bodies that looks a heck of a lot more like that, and we're trying to suss out what's happening. Right? A couple of rushers, a couple of blockers, and is position good? Is it not? And then all of a sudden, quarterback decides she's going to step up and flip it to somebody anyway. But be prepared that we will see two rushers coming, two blockers in the backfield, and trying to maintain it will be difficult for the referee to keep all five of those players and see all the fouls that need to happen. So once again, line of scrimmage officials, if you see two rushers going, probably a good idea that you take a peek in that backfield and help out your referee on some of these calls. Again, we have a blocker step up, get a good legal position, maintain that even as they move laterally to push the defender back the other direction and give their quarterback just another second to escape and get around the edge here. All right. I had some more videos that seemed to not be in the place that I thought they were going to be. That sucks. Oh. Okay, well, the good news is it is 7:43 and we have time to take some questions. I'm gonna ask you all to stay on mute and I'm gonna have Matt actually talk to me about what's been going on in the chat and see if we need to address some things that you all have been bringing up in the chat. Matt, what do you have?
So Diego had a really good question about blocking. Let me try to find it real quick. He said you moved on. He just wanted, no, what should it, like what type of leg? Okay, so had leg descended out of the frame of her body. What's the ruling? So essentially, like he wants to know if they chicken wing it or stick their leg out, is that a penalty?
Yes, yes, it is. I can't, I, my space that I can occupy is essentially the width of my shoulders and my hips, right? So when I have right of place, think about my right of place as the width of my shoulders and my hips. So if I'm going to stick my leg out and cause contact, that is not my place. My place is the width of my shoulders and my hips. Now, that right of place, like we've shown, can move laterally along a line to continue to push that rusher laterally, but I lose that right. But if I'm moving laterally, my hips and my shoulders have to be moving at the same rate as my legs and my arms. Because if my leg gets out ahead of me and I cause contact, then it will be a foul, right? I can't, we went over that in one of the slides. You know, you can't cause contact with an elbow, an arm, a hand, a leg, none of those things. If the screen blocker causes contact with any of those parts of their body, we're going to have an illegal blocking foul.
So then the other ones are stuff that we just haven't gone over, like how many players can rush. Please talk about yards and fouls, where it's supposed to be marked off, but we don't have the rule book to go over that stuff yet. There was one other good question out there. Let me see. Somebody asked about flopping, and is that an unsportsmanlike? I wouldn't see flopping as a penalty, but if they're doing it egregiously, where they're making a scene every time and you warn them, then we could go unsportsmanlike, right?
Yeah, if it's the same player falling to the ground multiple times and you've talked to the player and the head coach, then we could absolutely have an unsportsmanlike on that. It's not coming out on the first and maybe even the second one offense, but if you know, Carl, downfield blocking, yes,
Yeah.
I'll tell you all right now. There are zero restrictions inside of this rule book about when and where blocking can happen. So if it is not illegal, we assume and believe it is legal. So since there is nothing inside the rule book that says screen blocking can only happen here or it will be illegal if it happens here, reference to any of those things is not found, or I haven't found it. Maybe somebody else will find it and I'll get corrected in a couple of weeks when we finally get rule books. But I've been through the rule book several times and I can't seem to, there's no reference to anywhere that it is disallowed. So if it is not made reference to it being illegal someplace, then we make it legal everywhere. That's the way it goes. I see the question about punt returns. We're going to cover all of that when we cover punting and the kicking game, which will happen in 2 weeks.
You saw Richard Kim, so the player may put their hands out front and make light contact as long as they do not push hard.
Yeah, I'm going to be okay with that. I don't think that that needs to be a foul, right? Again, contact needs to be impactful. If my hands are just braced in front of me at chest level and I'm not extending my arms, then any contact that happens is generally not going to be impactful. And if it turns impactful, then I need to figure out who was responsible to avoid that impactful contact. So yeah, I'm okay with that. Hands just right in front of your chest as long as the arms aren't extended.
And then
Extended.
Dion had, oh, sorry. And then Dion had another one. Now, can they build a wall blocking like two players next to each other? Can they line it all up and like four at a time, or do they have to be spread out? How does that supposed to work?
Yeah. Thanks, Dion. Way to just like make it difficult. Um, yeah, so if I want to put three players shoulder to shoulder next to each other, um, and send my runner around that wall, that's going to be legal. Um, just remember, one of the things that's going to be tricky is doing that while, for the most part, they're not going to understand that they have to stay still, right? So I hope coaches are not necessarily teaching this, but if I design a hook and ladder and have two players that are in the exact right spot where they're supposed to be, standing perfectly still, and after I pitch the ball back, um, the ball carrier runs right around those two stationary players, that's going to be legal, right? A moving wall block often is going to end up in a foul because right of place will supersede right of way. And those defenders will be very quick to occupy their space when attempting to get to a flag, right? So that defender or that offensive player moving with the ball carrier, or two or three offensive players moving with the ball carrier, they're going to get themselves in trouble when it comes to right of place superseding right of way. No,
Tim
it
Battle has a good question.
uh hiking the ball. Is it okay for the center to set
Oh
on
no,
the
Andrew
side?
B. Sorry, no, Andrew B.
Oh,
Because we,
Andrew B. Okay.
yes, I'm the best.
Does the rule require hands to be at the sides? No, it just says you can't contact, right? It doesn't require them to be at your sides, behind your back, crossed across your chest. It just basically says if you cause impactful contact with your arms or legs or elbows or then it will be a blocking foul, right? And then Tina, we talked about centers and hiking just a little bit last week, so I'll just cover it really quickly. The only formational requirement is that the center be behind the ball. Okay. It does not say anywhere that the ball has to be snapped between the legs. It does not say anywhere that it has to do anything else. The only formation requirement, and when it comes to snapping and handing, is that the center be behind the ball. That's all.
And I think one thing that a couple people have brought up, and it's that advantage disadvantage kind of thing that we need to that they wanted like a little better about. But I mean, I think that's at the end of the day, you just have to go out and do some football and understand when there's an advantage gain and when it's not, and when it's a disadvantage. So I think that's something that people are bringing up a little bit here and there about, hey, when's there advantage and disadvantage? And I think that's just once you start doing reps, you'll start seeing, hey, was that an advantage or where there's none gain? And I know you were hitting on it, so I think that's just something people were asking more about more clarification on advantage versus disadvantage.
Yeah, let me pull that up just a second. So we have our, again, this isn't perfect, and we know that everyone's moving, but imagine we were moving down along this straight yellow line, and this blocker was going to be shifting to their right, continuing to push this rusher to the top of the screen, right? The top of the field, away from us. Um, and this line is their line as long as they continue to move along that line, and they can continue to move along that line without extending their arms or without sticking their legs out. Their hips and shoulders have to move all at the same place. And then once that rusher has crossed that line, they've now gained the advantage, right? So about right here is where the defensive rusher is gaining the advantage, and it is now the responsibility of the screen blocker to avoid contact and stop moving laterally, and stop their movement in order to avoid that contact. Now, again, it's difficult, right? Because here, this screen blocker is just standing still. But imagine in your brain, right? She's sliding to the side with the rusher and trying to push her towards the top of the screen. And then all of a sudden, that rusher takes that step where they cross that imaginary line. On your screen, it's a yellow line. Right here, that's when now suddenly the rusher has advantage and the screen blocker has lost their advantage. Okay? So at this point, that screen blocker no longer has right of place. Well, they do still have right of place. She's just standing in her right of place. And if she moves out of that right of place, she's going to be causing impactful contact, and we're going to have a foul. Okay. So I know that it's difficult again because it's not full speed, but just start to imagine things like that in your brain, right? Is that screen blocker past that imaginary line or is the rusher past that imaginary line that the screen blocker is allowed to move along? Because at this point, if we have contact, this is going to be a foul for illegal screen blocking, illegal blocking, because screen blocking is legal, illegal blocking, right? Is that helpful? I hope.
Yeah, Michael had a really good question. So, on that same one, if you have someone with their hands up, so here's what he says. He asked, if they don't have their arms by their side, crossed or behind the back, is it an illegal block? It question mark. If they extend their hands, is that a foul? What if the defense extends their hand? So I guess the question is, how much contact are we going to let? Because earlier in one, you kind of mentioned like, hey, we're going to let that go. When are we going to allow it, and when will we not allow it? And I think that's just a clarification to understand it better.
Awesome. So we're going to go back to impactful contact, right? If I'm a screen blocker and my arms extend out in front of me and I contact and it does not impact that rusher in any way, leave it alone. If it impacts the rusher, call the foul, right? It says they cannot contact with their arms, legs. We can go back to that. Sorry, give me just 1 second. Right? After assuming a legal position, a screen blocker may move to maintain their legal position by moving in the same direction or path as the opponent. A screen blocker shall not extend the arms or use the hands, arms, elbows, or legs to initiate contact. That contact has to be impactful for us to call it a foul. And I will continue to just drive home those points. right? Hopefully you can think through, and like Matt said, the more we see it when we get out on these fields and we start seeing these things, you will know. I will tell you, all of those video clips that I used today, all I did was go on YouTube and search NAIA flag football, and about 20 games came up. And I just started watching games and looked for clips. Okay? If you have some time, it's not a bad idea to sit and watch. Um, there will be more. We will have more opportunities, and I will be creating another probably 10-minute video that will get uploaded to YouTube that just talks through what's legal, what's illegal. But just know, right, the blocker extending their arms, hands, arms, elbows, legs to initiate contact. If that contact is impactful on the play or the player, we're calling that a foul. Hopefully that got it.
Yeah. I'm trying to see if there's anything else that I think is out there. Okay. No. Yeah. I think that's good. Unless anybody else has any more questions. Questions?
I'm gonna try it. See what the feedback is. Huh? Yes.
All right. What's your question? Participant.
All right. So here's the link. This is a quiz. This is not just to fill in your contact information. You will need to answer some questions as well as submit your name and unit to get credit for this meeting. I warned you, right? It was a really good idea to take some notes on what the definition of right of place, right of way, and impactful contact are, and why we're calling them fouls, why we're not calling them fouls. Okay?
Excuse me, man. So I had one question. This counts for like hours of credit, like towards to allow us to actually ref the game.
That's so
100%.
that, Connor, that's up to your individual instructional chair, right? So
Okay,
each unit
got it.
has their own individual instructional chair. Your instructional chair should have let you know, or will let you know whether you're getting credit for these. I will tell you, all of the instructional chairs get a list of who has attended the meeting and who has taken the quiz. And then it's not up to me whether they award you credit for it or not. That's up to them. It's just up to me to present the information.
Thank you. Understand.
Awesome. All
Thanks,
right,
Marianne.
y'all. Make sure you get that quiz. I'm gonna stop recording.
I have a question. That last video, was there
Yep.
a quiz after that video?
Nope, there's a quiz in the chat, Luther.
Oh, okay. It's a
You got to
quiz-
click on the link in the chat. Everybody's got to
Oh.
click on the link in the chat.